All right, welcome again, one last time to the new user webinar, part one, learning the basics for Open Up high school mathematics teachers. My name is Dawn Peterson. I'll do a little bit more introduction in just a moment, but let's talk about the goal of today. First, we'll do some webinar etiquette. Please leave your microphone off, unmute in the lower left-hand corner of the screen. You can choose to have your video on or off, whatever you're comfortable with. And please use the chat to ask any questions, any clarifications that you have throughout the presentation. This session will be interactive. So if you already have an Assistments account, we'd love for you to open up a new window and sign in or sign up with your Google or Canvas account at this time. If you don't have the ability to set up an account at this moment, or you're a Canvas user who hasn't started the integration yet, we do have a sample account. And actually, since we have a small group today, we'd love to just hear from you in the chat. If you are already set up with an Assistments account, let us know. If you need some support getting set up, Carrie, our chat moderator, who I will introduce more in just a moment, can help actually walk you through some steps of getting set up with a sample account. So you can do that right in the chat. The goal of today is that all of our participants and anyone watching this recording will learn the basics of getting started with Assistments using Google Classroom or Canvas, and of course, the new Open Up Resources high school curriculum. We'll start with just an overview of what Assistments is for those of you who are new to the platform. We'll start with creating an account if you don't have that set up yet. We'll talk about the different ways to create an assignment and locate the content that you have. We'll get to walk through the student experience so you can actually play the student and see what that looks like. And then we'll close up by talking about how you can use data to assess class performance. And then we'll close up with setting students up for success. Again, my name is Dawn Peterson, and I am the Director of Content and Partnerships at the Assistments Foundation. In my previous life, I was an 8th grade math teacher. I taught 8th grade math and Algebra 1 for about 14 years, and 10 of those years I used Assistments in my classroom. I will tell you, once I got settled in my routine using Assistments, I could never go back. The immediate data I got and the reports that I got were so valuable. So I am so happy to share with you what I know about Assistments today and answer any questions that you have. And before I hand it over to Carrie, I also just want to introduce Dana, and she's from Open Up Resources. Dana, you want to say hello real quick?
Hi, I'm Dana Cartier, and I'm very excited to go through this webinar with you guys. And I look forward to answering any questions you have about the high school mathematics program.
Thanks, Dana. All right, so I'll pass it over to Carrie, and she's going to walk us through the next piece of the webinar.
Awesome. So before I do that, I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Carrie Moy, and I'm the program associate here at Assistments. Prior to this role, I taught middle school math for 12 years in Chicago, Illinois. I actually used the Open Up middle school curriculum along with Assistments, and my background is very similar to Dawn. Once I started using Assistments, I just can't imagine using any other platform with Open Up and the amount of data that I get. So I'm super excited to sort of share my experience with you today. And so I'm going to give you a quick overview of Assistments and what it is. And so it's an evidence-based, forever free online math platform. And so it integrates with Google Classroom and as well as Canvas. And for me, it just makes it really easy to assign from your curriculum online. It saves you time as a teacher because if you're creating anything, you can actually pull from a library of content that they have. So if you are supplementing your high school material, you'll be able to have access to the Open Up middle school curriculum as well and the problems there. It fosters growth mindset with students. I definitely saw that because of the immediate feedback that students get and the multiple attempts that they have at every single problem that you assign. And so why Assistments is, like I said, that regular and timely feedback really fosters growth mindset in students. And that actually increases engagement in class. So having that immediate feedback really engaged my students in ownership of their own learning. They didn't have to wait until the next class period to find out if they were correct or incorrect. They could just reevaluate their own work and then move on with the problem. So a lot of self-learning and growth mindset. from using assessments. For me as a teacher, I loved it because of the daily formative information that you got, so that you could use that to create actionable steps in your lesson plan the next day and quickly identify students that were ready for challenges or students that might need extra support. And so you can differentiate really easily with the amount of data. Now, if you don't believe me, assessments is actually proven by research to support unfinished learning. So we're one of 3 middle school math interventions with a tier 1 rating for evidence for ESSA. And we've actually been in multiple studies with like randomized controls and have been able to prove 75% more learning in classrooms that use assessments than classrooms that do not. And I think that's just so relevant as we think about this next year and really addressing unfinished learning. And so I am one of about many teachers, Dawn included here, finding assessments just to make life so much easier because you don't have to scour the internet for different problem sets or having support because you have a library of content to pull from. You get immediate instructional information that you can use to target students and really help support with differentiation. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the typical teacher routine and what I did prior to finding assessments and how it's changed with the use of assessments. So you probably assign content, whether it was in a worksheet or creating something online, and then your students would complete that, right? Step 3 is always where I had a little bit of trouble. I don't know about you, but it was grading the work, right? Taking all those papers, looking at the assignment, and then sorting them to then create to use that data to inform instruction. The assessments routine is kind of that enhanced. And so what I mean by that is that you as a teacher will have a library of content to assign from, including all of the Open Up high school curriculum is now on assessments as well. And then students are going to, as they're doing that assignment online, get immediate feedback that they can use correctively to find their own mistakes and then move forward with the problem. Now, instead of grading, you essentially get lots of data that you can then analyze. And so you can use that like how you would have done like paper trends. You just have all that information to quickly find trends that you can then share with your students and use to take action for your next lesson. So hopefully that convinces you to really get started with assessments like Dawn and I did.
Thanks, Carrie. All right, so here's how this is going to work, everyone. We're going to start out talking about each one of these steps that I outlined in our agenda. I will be live demoing each one of these steps, and then we'll come back to the slide deck just to review some information. And just a reminder again that the slide decks will be sent out in a follow-up email so you can access all the links that I talk about and review any of the steps. So first, we're just going to talk about getting that account created. And again, if you're having any difficulty getting your account created, please shoot Carrie an email in the chat and she can help walk you through those steps if you need it. In order to use assessments, you do need to have either a Google Classroom or or Canvas account as your LMS. For Google Classroom, you need to be authorized as a teacher in your school's G Suite. Most teachers assume that this is already the case. Sometimes it's set up a little bit different. So if you're having any issues at all, please feel free to email us at contact@assistments.org and we can manually verify you within 24 hours. If you are a Canvas user, you do need to have an institutional Canvas account versus the free individual teacher account. In order to use the Canvas assessments integration, your Canvas administrator does need to do a little bit of setup prior to being able to assign. So Carrie will share the instructions that if you're using Canvas and this has not already been done, you can forward these over to your Canvas admin. All right, so let me go ahead and go live and show you what this looks like, and then we'll come back and do a recap in the slides. So you're always going to start at the assessments website, assessments.org. And if you are a new user, you will click on sign up in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. And of course, I didn't log out last time, so let's try that again. Log in. At this point, you'll be prompted to log in with Google or Canvas. I'll show you both just because they do look a little bit different depending on your LMS. So first I'll do Google, and of course it signed me in. Let me try this one more time. I apologize, guys. I'm going to open up a new incognito window and try that one more time. All right, so again, we're starting at assessments. We're choosing sign up. I'm choosing Google. There we go. And at this point, we're going to log in with your Google credentials associated with your Google Classroom account. All right, and my password. There we go. Again, it's important if you're logging in with Google that you are using the email that's associated with Google Classroom. Sometimes we find teachers have one email for their communications and one for Google that matches their student's domain. So that's something that you want to make sure you're keeping in mind. You know that you're logged in because you're brought into the Assessments app here where you see some content folders and you see your name appear in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. Let me show you that again for Canvas users. Again, it looks a little bit different. So I'm going to choose Canvas as my LMS. At this point, we're going to enter our Canvas's institution URL. You can either start just typing it in and then locate it down here. There we go. Or your Canvas administrator might just give you the URL that you can copy and paste right into this box. I just want to note for Canvas teachers right down here at the bottom, here are the instructions that you can forward to your Canvas admin as well. When I log in, you will be prompted to put in your existing Canvas credentials. Okay, so just give me one moment to do that so I don't put a typo in. Oh, sorry, guys. There we go. Each time you log in with Canvas, whether you are a teacher or a student, you will be asked to authorize the connection. That is a Canvas security setting that we couldn't get around. So that's going to happen each time. No need to worry. Again, you'll know that you're logged in because you see your name appear in the upper right-hand corner and you see our assessments content folders. All right, so just coming back here to the deck. If you don't have an account yet, or you're telling one of your colleagues about this, getting that account is super easy. You start at Assessments, choose your LMS once you log in, and log in with the existing credentials that you already have for your LMS. All right, so any questions that you have, please put them in the chat, and Carrie will either answer those in the moment or she'll bring them to my attention during a question break. So now we're going to get started with step 1. During this webinar, we're going to follow the track of James Wilson to see what it looks like as a new teacher using assessments with the Open Up Resources high school material for the first time. So let's consider what he needs to do to get started with assessments. First, James needs to obviously find the content that he wants to assign from the assessments content library. So just to highlight what we have that aligns with Open Up Resources, all of the student-facing materials are available to assign as independent practice online to your students. Students are going to get immediate feedback as they work, and the teacher is going to get a class and student level data report. We do have the Open Up Resources 6 through 8 content, which Carrie highlighted earlier, but we also have the brand new Open Up High School Mathematics, both AGA, Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2, the traditional pathway, and then also the integrated pathway. So this is something that we are continuing to add right now. So if you look through the content folders, which I'll show you in just a moment, you'll notice that we do have the first couple units for Math 1, 2, and 3, and those will be getting added on an ongoing basis throughout the fall and winter, hopefully ahead of what you are assigning. For each one of the lessons within these units, you will see any Jumpstart activities when available, all of the student tasks, the exit tickets, the retrievals, and then the practice problem sets. We also have the unit assessments, which at this moment right now, you do have to email us at contact@assessments.org to get access to these. And later on in October, those are going to be available right in the content folders. But at this moment, Carrie, maybe you can put that email. There it is, Carrie, thank you. Just shoot us an email and just say, I'm looking for the Open Up High School Mathematics assessments, and we'll shoot you a link so you have access to those. Just a note that we do have 2 ways that you can assign, and I'll be demoing this in just a few minutes, but we have a formative or practice mode, and then we have test mode. Formative mode, it means that the students are going to get feedback as they work. They have the option to show answer if they need it, if they're really stuck, which I'll be demoing. They have multiple attempts to answer correctly. And test mode is you're going to use if you're looking for a more summative experience. If you're giving those end of unit assessments or end of course assessments, students are not going to get immediate feedback. They're not going to be able to request the answer. They're not going to get multiple attempts. So this is just a choice that you have when you're assigning, depending if you're giving that day-to-day formative practice or whether you are giving the assessments that we have available or even the exit tickets. So I'm going to turn it over to Dana for a few minutes, and she's going to walk through the typical open up lesson aligned with the content that we do have in assessments. So Dana, it's over to you.
Thank you, Dawn. All right, so if you are in assessments and you're looking at the Open Up High School materials, you will notice that there are a variety of things for students to engage with. To begin with, there's jump starts. These are not there in every single lesson. They are strategically placed. They are designed to activate prior knowledge. And so they aren't what we've decided were required for every single lesson, but they are there when it's really important that kids sort of review and reflect on some mathematics before they dig into the lesson. So you'll see those jumpstart problems in there. You also see the student tasks, and student tasks consist of a variety of different mathematical problems, and they follow within the same sort of flow of the lesson of the launch, explore, and the discuss. That launch sort of frames the context and gets them excited about the lesson and what exactly they're going to be doing. The explorers, where they dig in and really do the mathematics, and then the discuss. So when they're sharing out and they're really developing their understanding and knowledge of the content from that day, as they explore how other people solve those problems and they work through the problems as sort of in a whole class or discuss scenario. So all of those problems exist within the student task in that same sequence of the launch, explore, discuss that you are used to. We also have exit tickets. Those are at the end of every single lesson. They're designed to be independent and formative assessments. And they're generally 5 to 10 minutes long each day. Then we have retrievals, which is a new section of our materials. We're really excited about them. These are designed to be done with students and teachers together. The materials reflect what the students will then do independently in the ready and go portion of their independent practice problems. And so that gives them the opportunity to get a little bit of assistance with the teacher around the types of problems that they didn't encounter during the lesson, but are going to encounter in that independent practice that they do later. So that's the ready, set, go then. The ready, set, go is that independent practice problem. You'll notice in the ready, they're reviewing mathematics in preparation for an upcoming lesson. Then the set is related directly to the lesson that they just had. And the go is review of previously learned mathematics, again, doing the distributive learning in that practice. Finally, we have some assessments available. You'll notice the quick quizzes are there, the unit assessments, and the performance assessment, which is a much larger, more in-depth type of assessment that typically addresses a variety of standards and in a non-traditional form of mathematics. So a problem outside of what they're used to seeing in a typical textbook or on like a standardized test. So it's a bit more engaging, a bit more complex. And the 3 of these assessments working together really give you a very full picture of students' ability and where they are in mastery of standards.
All right, thanks, Dana. I'll take it back from here. If anyone has any questions at all about the different elements of the curriculum, please feel free to put those in the chat, and Dana's there to answer questions you have about the Open Up curriculum. In addition to what we just talked about, that's aligned to the high school curriculum for Open Up, we also have some in-house built content and release date tests. So just to supplement your routine of assigning Open Up, we have skill builders and problem solving sets. These are both organized by Common Core, by grade level and strand, so that basically you just have an extra practice set to assign. Skill builders are mastery based, meaning when students get 3 of these questions in a row correct on a given strand, they place out, and problem solving sets are just a place you can find extra practice as needed. We do have some release state tests, mostly in Massachusetts and New York. And again, just a place that you can look to prepare students for state testing whenever that is in your state, or just again, give supplemental practice by strand. All right, so I'm going to go live now and talk about the different ways that you can find content within assessments and how to assign. So let's start out at the assessments website. So again, once you are logged in and you see your name in the upper right-hand corner, there are two ways to navigate content at this point. One is by going right through the curriculum folder. So when you click open up high school mathematics, you'll see the traditional pathway and then the integrated version right here. When you open each one of these courses, you'll see all of the units that you should recognize from the curriculum that either you have in print or on the Open Up website. Within each lesson, you're going to see a tab up at the top that shows you exactly those problems that you are expecting. At this point, for Ready, Set, Go, for example, you can choose to select all or just make a selection of problems that you want to assign. The other way that you can assign is by searching by standard. So if there is a particular standard that you are looking for, you can type that in or start typing the description of it. You'll see a list of all of the problems within our content library that are aligned to that standard. Furthermore, you can then filter by Open Up High School or Open Up 6 through 8 and High School and actually find all the problems in Open Up High School that align to that standard. If you're looking to create a practice set, if you're looking to give extra practice or extra review for a test or quiz for your students, and again, you can choose the problems that you want to assign, and you can either assign to class immediately, which I'll do in just a moment, or save to my problem sets. Save to my problem sets is really nice because you can do a little bit of prep work. If you're planning for the next week, Tuesday work. I'll keep it simple here. If you're doing some planning for the next week, if you're just curating your own problem sets for the rest of the year even, you can do that. Saving to my problem sets will save that problem to the tab over here on the left. And if I scroll to the bottom, there's my work. I can now assign it whenever I'm ready, or I can just leave it there for when I need it. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and show you what the assigning process looks like. So I'm going to open up the Open Up High School Mathematics folder and look into Algebra 1, Unit, let's see, 3, Lesson 3. Oh gosh, I didn't write down the right thing. Let me see. Hold on one second. I forgot a step when I was writing down which one I was going to demo for you today. Let's see. And I'll just choose one of these here. So once I click into that folder, I can choose the problems that I want to assign here and then assign to class. At this point, we have some options. We call these the assign time options. So I can change the name of the assignment. So I'll change this to today's date, maybe homework. Choose your LMS. This is going to look just about the same with Google Classroom or Canvas. The very first time that you use assessments, you're going to want to import the classes that already exist in your LMS. So you've already set up Google Classroom, you've already set up Canvas and all of your rosters. So when you import, you'll see a list of all of the classes that you have in your LMS, and you'll import those classes. They will then show up on your list here, and you can assign to one class or multiple classes at once. Here's that test mode function that I told you about. So if you are looking at a more summative experience where you don't want students to have feedback, you'll just toggle this switch. You then have the option to choose the problem order in which the problems will be delivered to students. Linear order is going to give the problems in the same order that they are in the original problem set. Random order will scramble the problems in random order. And then student choice is actually going to deliver all the students, all the problems at the same time, and the students can pick and choose the order that they want to work on the problems in. This resembles more of a state testing style if your state uses online testing. For today, I'll just choose linear, and then you have the option to set a release date or due date. You can leave those blank. Once I assign, I'll get a message, fingers crossed, there we go, assignment successfully created, And that assignment now lives both in your My Assignments tab, which I'll show you in just a moment, and also in Google Classroom or Canvas. In Google Classroom, the assignment will appear with a link inside, and that's how the teacher is going to be able to access the data and the class performance. And in the assessments, excuse me, let me go back. And when I click on My Assignments, we'll see a list right here of all the assignments that were assigned. You can filter by class, you can filter by status, or you can filter by release or due date. I just want to show you real quick what that's going to look like over in Canvas. Everything I just did with assigning is going to be the same, but in Canvas, the assignment shows up, most recent shows up down at the bottom. And again, within there's going to be an assessments link. That's how students are going to access their assignment, but that's also how the teacher is going to access the class data. All right, so just scrolling back. So we have two options, searching by curriculum, just navigating the content folders, finding what you want. You can either save or save to my problem sets or assign at this moment. You can search by standard just by typing in either a Common Core code or a description of the code that you're looking for. You'll see a comprehensive list of all of the problems across curriculum that are aligned to that standard. And then you can even filter by Open Up Resources. Again, then you can save to my problem sets or assign to class now. So I'm going to give you just a 3-minute break. Just so you can kind of play around, we can answer any questions that are coming in, and you can navigate those folders and see if you have questions. So I'm going to start the timer now just for about 3 minutes. And during that time, Carrie, if there's any questions, I would be happy to answer those. This is your time, my friends. And during this time, I'm going to go ahead and assign that problem set that I was looking for earlier. Carrie, any questions coming in that I can help to answer for the group?
Nope, I just answered it with there's no ability to pause once an assignment is assigned. Students have the ability to work through the problem at their own pace.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Again, feel free to post any questions or wonderings that you have in the chat. We'll have a few points during the webinar that will pause and give you a chance to try things out. Elizabeth, that is a great question. I'd love to answer. She's asking about getting the program approved through your district. We do have a team that signs off on privacy agreements, data privacy, things of that sort. So if you do need to get approval to use assessments within your district, please email us at contact@assessments.org. Thank you, Carrie. And we will get any of that settled. I know that in the past we have had a number of Chicago Public Schools teachers, including Carrie. So hopefully we can get anything settled if you have issues or questions around that. All right, so I hope everyone had a chance to just kind of play around and look through the folders. So we will move on, just checking in on James. And I think I went a little bit ahead, but James teaches Open Up Resources. He needs to know how to assign. So we'll just recap this because I already did this part in the demo. But in order to assign to your class, you're always going to start at the Assessments website and click Explore Content, and then find and assign the content that you want to assign. You can save to my problem sets, which does allow you to be able to come back to an assignment, add extra problems to assignment, and basically curate your own problem sets. If you want to assign maybe part of the exit ticket and part of the practice problems into one, you can absolutely do that using the Save to My Problem Sets feature. During the assign time options, just as a reminder, you have the option to change the assignment name. You can certainly leave it as is, but some of these titles with the lesson name are a little bit cumbersome, so feel free to change it. You'll choose your LMS. You'll always import your classes before getting started. Just to note that this does also import all the rosters that you have within your LMS. A common question we get is what to do if a student drops out of their class, switches to another period, anything like that. That's when you're going to want to sync your account. So again, this is right here in Assign Time Options. Synchronizing your account will kind of refresh the roster, refresh the class list to match what's in your LMS. Test mode is going to give that formative experience, so that is totally optional. Excuse me, the summative experience. You have the option to choose problem order, and then you can set the release and due dates if you wish. And I think we're going to skip this in the interest of time, because again, I went a little bit ahead. So we're going to, I don't see any questions coming in. So we're going to move on to step 2. So step 2 is where students get the immediate feedback as they complete their work. So checking back in on James, he has his account, he knows how to assign, and now he wants to know what his students' experience is going to look like in assessments so that he can best support positive student culture around the platform. And selfishly for a teacher, they just want to see what it looks like before they assign it to students to better prepare themselves. I guess that's not selfish. It's something that's good planning. So we're going to just take a couple minutes right now, and Carrie's going to share a link in the chat. And what we'd like you to do, this is where you do need to be logged in with an Assessments account, is you're going to click that link. Make sure you're logged in. Again, you'll see your name appear in the upper right-hand corner of the screen when you're logged in. And when you click on the triple dot to the right, you have the option to view problem set as student. This is going to bring you into the student experience. So what I'd love you to do right now, this is from our high school Algebra 1 curriculum. I'd like you to take a few minutes and just complete this problem set and share any questions, noticings, or wonderings that you have in the chat as we go. I am going to do a full demo of the student experience. So this is just to give you a taste of what to expect and what it looks like if you've never seen the student experience before. Just to do that one more time. So click the link that Carrie's sharing in the chat. As long as you're logged in, click on the triple dot and preview problem set as student. And that'll bring you right into the student experience. All right, so I'll give you a couple minutes to try that out. All right, just another minute or so. I'm also wondering if any of the teachers in the group have seen this problem set. This is from Algebra 1, Unit 1. So if you're an algebra teacher, maybe you've assigned this to your students already in paper format. And I wonder if you have any comparison, what you think about assigning digitally. All right. So again, if you have any thoughts, wonderings, questions, please post them in the chat. And if anything needs to be demoed again, or you want to see anything at all, I'm happy to do that. All right, so let's walk through what the student experience is going to look like for one of your kiddos using assessments. So we'll first start with Google, and then I'll go over to Canvas and show that as well. So to access the assignment, your student's going to go right through the LMS and log in with their existing credentials. So your student goes right through Google, clicks on that assignment, and within they're going to see this assessments link. When they click on that link, the very first time that they access assessments, they will be prompted to log in with the credentials already linked in assessments. They will be prompted to create an account, which is just a little blue button. No additional information is going to be collected from them. It's just going to allow assessments and Google to speak together. And then they'll be brought into the student experience. In the student experience, and this looks the same in Google or Canvas, the student's going to see a progress bar on the left. This progress bar allows them to see how many problems are completed, how many problems there are total, and how many they have completed here, and they can track their progress on the left. They're going to see one question at a time unless something was assigned in student choice, and then they'll see all the problems at once. Over here on the right, we see a progress bar, which indicates how many attempts it took the student to arrive at the correct answer. So I'm going to go ahead and demo some different scenarios for you here, starting with the student gets it right on the first try. If they get that answer correct, they're told it's correct, so they're feeling good, and now they can move on to the next problem. For this problem, maybe the student doesn't get it right on the first attempt. They still have an opportunity to rework their problem, to revisit the table up here. And like Carrie said, this really promotes a growth mindset because it's not one and done. The student can prove to the teacher that they know what they're doing by giving multiple attempts. So if they get it correct on the third try, they still get that positive feedback. The progress bar, like I said, records the number of attempts it took. When the student gets it right the first time, they get 100%, goes down to 67, 33, and then 0. We don't encourage that this score to be used as a grade, simply because most of the time teachers are using assessments as formative practice. On this problem right here, maybe the student wasn't in class the day that you covered this topic. Maybe they just want to, like my 8th graders, see how many digits they can put on this box, or maybe they're just really honestly struggling. That's why we have this show answer button over here on the right. The show answer button will provide the student with the correct answer so that they can progress with the assignment. This, for a lot of teachers, is a red flag, and they're going, no, I don't want the students to ask for the answer. I assure you that on the report, you'll be able to tell very clearly who had to request the answer, so you can provide the correct assistance to make sure that student gets up to speed. Let's see here. Just going to put the answer in for this one. And the last type of question I want to highlight is our open response question. So here the student has to create this table of values. So we do have a table tool where students can enter the table. Students can also type in whatever context that they need to in this answer box. And they can also upload a picture of their work. So if you have students that would work better on paper, they can certainly do their work on paper, upload it into the open response box, and then submit their answer. Just a note that at the beginning of October, we're going to have some additional options here, one of those being a drawing pad. So the student can also initiate the drawing pad, kind of draw their table in or whatever diagram that they need to draw, and that will auto-populate right into the open response box. Because this is an open response question, the student's not going to get immediate feedback, but the teacher does have the option to score open response work and leave written feedback for the student as well. When the student's done with the assignment, they will see a student report. The student report will allow the student to review the questions that were being asked. They can see how they performed, including their average score. And right here where it says ungraded, if the teacher chooses to leave feedback for an open response question, the student will see that feedback right here underneath their submission. For those Canvas teachers out there, I don't want to forget you. So again, the student who completes, who's using Canvas, let me just get back here, will open up their assignment. Let me try to find one that hasn't been done yet, and they'll click right here on the assignment link within. They will be asked to authorize, like I said, and then they'll be brought right into the student experience. Everything at this point is going to be identical. So let me come back to the slide deck and just recap that one more time, and then we'll have a question break. So students are going to access their assignment directly through their LMS and through the credentials that they already have created. They will be asked to create a new account. They will not have to submit any additional information. This is just the handshake between ASSISTments and their LMS. The student view of an assignment will show student progress over here on the bar on the left. Students will see one question at a time, and when they submit their work, they're going to get immediate feedback. The feedback that they get is corrective feedback, so they're right or they're wrong, and letting them know that they can try again, or show answer, which will not appear in test mode, like I mentioned earlier, but show answer is going to provide them with the answer so that if they're stuck, they can move on with the rest of the assignment. Just wanted to show you a quick snapshot of what student choice looks like. So if you are looking to provide the students with all the problems and allow them to pick and choose the order, they'll see something like this. They can click on Start Problem. They do have to finish this problem if they enter in before they can move on to the next problem, but it gives them a little bit more flexibility to kind of work on the problems they feel more comfortable with. And then the student assignment report, they will be allowed to review the problems by hovering or clicking on this ID on the left. They'll see their score. And here's an example of what the feedback will look like if the teacher goes in and leaves feedback. All right, Carrie, any questions coming in?
Yeah, this one is about accommodations of resources. Is there any way within ASSISTments that allows for like a reading of the question for students?
Sure. Yeah. So we do not at this time have any internal accommodations built within ASSISTments, but we are compatible with Google Chrome add-ons. So I don't think I have it right here, but there's a Google Chrome add-on for Read Aloud that if you download that right onto the browser, students can highlight text and it will read the text aloud. Carrie, I wonder if you have a minute, you could also find in the teacher corner, we have an artifact for students with low vision and need accommodations for that. So we have a teacher who teaches at a school for the blind and visually impaired. And she actually has created a great slide deck for how she kind of has external resources to use right along with ASSISTments that can help her students who need it. There was one other. If anyone has students who need translated materials, again, at this time, we don't have any translated materials within assessments, but the Google Translate add-on is compatible with assessments. So students can highlight the text and it will translate. I know it's not 100% perfect all the time, but it's something that you can add on if you have students who do need translation services. All right, anything else, Carrie?
Nope, I don't think so. I did find that user resource, so I'll put it in, and I will put in the translated material.
Great. Thank you. All right, so now we're going to move on to step 3. So step 3 is where Carrie outlined the old way. The teacher would be grading all their work. They'd be scoring. They'd be trying to analyze with a plethora of paper in front of them. So now with assessments, the teacher gets to spend time analyzing the data instead of just simply grading it with that red pen. So now that James understands the student experience, he needs to understand how to interpret the resulting data he's going to receive in the assessments assignment report. So again, I'm going to go live here and I'm going to show you what this looks like and talk about some of that available data. And then we'll actually give you a chance to kind of play around with the data and ask any questions that you might have. So there are 2 ways for you to access the data from the assignments that you assigned. One is right through your LMS. So if you're a Canvas teacher and you're looking for data, you're going to click right on that assessments link. Just a note that when the students clicked on this link, they were brought into the student experience because they're denoted a student in assessments. When the teacher clicks on this link, of course, they'll be asked to authorize and they'll be brought into the report. So I just want to show you that. The other way to access data. Oh, sorry, let me just show you in Google Classroom first. So again, in Google, you're going to click right on that link. And as long as you have a verified teacher account, you'll be brought into the report. The other way to access data is right through your assessments account. So when you log into assessments and click on My Assignments on the left, you'll see a list of all of the assignments you or your co-teacher have assigned. You can filter by class, you can filter by status, and then again, you can filter by release or due date. When you open the assignment, you're going to see an overview of some details. How many students completed the work, how many problems you assigned, if you set a release or due date, and then any standards that were addressed in that problem set. If you click on View Report, you'll be brought into the report. So I just want to go over a few pieces of data here, and then we'll give you a chance to kind of dive in and play around. But just to plug that in a couple of weeks, in 2 weeks on October 5th, we are having New User Part 2 for Open Up Resources teachers. And this is really a dive on data. We'll be talking about different scenarios of what type of data is going to inform different next steps in your classroom. So today we're just doing an overview of data. And if you are interested in really how to implement the data, I strongly encourage you join that next session. I'll be talking more about that in our wrap up. So when we look at the report, we have 2 views, the problems view and the standard view. So I'm going to start with the problems view. At the very top, we get to see the students who did not start the assignment, the students who are in progress and when they last worked on the assignment, and then the students who completed the assignment, and again, the timestamp of when they finished. Moving down a little bit, we have the performance summary. So this is going to highlight for the teacher for each one of the problems that were assigned, the number of students who got it correct on the first try, correct eventually, and then incorrect. Incorrect is a nicer and key way of saying press show answer. They needed support. They couldn't get it on their own. So red is where you're going to want to look to see how many students needed support with that problem. Over here, if we click on this P1, problem 1, part A, part B, the blue text down here, that's going to open up the student view for the problem. So you can review that right there. Any aligned standards, available correct answers, and then another breakdown of the score. And you can move through problems down here on the left or expand if you want to really present this in front of your class. Moving down, we have the detailed report. So this is where we're going to get a little bit more detail on how each student performed and how each problem performed. So starting up here, we have the average score for the entire assignment. Each column represents a different question, so we can see the average score for each one of the problems that were assigned. If there was any common wrong answers, those are going to be highlighted here. Common wrong answers are one of my favorite things to implement in class, and I know Carrie as well. And you can really come up with a my favorite no activity to highlight what students did correctly if they arrived at one of these incorrect answers. As I move down, I see each one of these rows represents a different student, how much time they spent. The symbols, the colors here represent correct on the first try, correct eventually, or the red or pink represents they had to press show answer. They couldn't get it right on their own. And then we get student scores. One thing I just want to show you real quick is the scoring. So if you're interested in what the X's and the triangles mean, we have a scoring guide here. Some questions and assessments do have built-in hints. So if you're wondering what the hints are, the triangles, not all the problem sets, but some do have hints that students can access. And then the X's indicate that the student had an incorrect response. Over here on the right, I can also unhide names or hide any other columns. So if I actually want to see any of these student names, I can do that. And then furthermore, if I want to dive in a little bit deeper, I can click on the student's name, and that's going to bring me to the student details report. The student details report is literally a play-by-play for how that student performed, how long it took them with their first response, an additional minute and 36 seconds, and they entered 3.6. So we get to see every answer they typed in, including their open response work here. And this is one of the places that you as the teacher can score open response. So you can give them their score out of 4 points and give any written feedback that you want to give them as well. I'm going to show you the other way, and then we'll take a question break because I know this is a lot. But again, there's going to be even more information on the data report in our next section of the webinar. The other way that you can score student work is by clicking on Assess. So Assess is going to bring you to the essay scoring page where you can kind of look at the entire class's work and their submissions. And you can score on a 4-point scale, same as on the student details report, and then leave any feedback. One other thing on this page that I really like is that you can custom sort student responses. So if there are some student responses that you want to highlight, uses kind of a 4-point scale scoring rubric, things like that, you can number those, custom sort, and now you have these responses that you can share out with your class. And of course, you can hide student names if you want to. You can even hide the other columns if you don't want those, just so you can have the responses in one place. Before I forget, I do want to talk about the standards report. So the other view that we have is the standards view, and the standards view is going to tell you what standards were tagged in this problem set, how many questions there were that were aligned to that standard, and then how each student performed on that standard. So if you are grading by standards and not by just score, this is a great way to kind of assess and track how students are doing on a particular standard. All right, I just said standard a lot of times. So I'm going to come back here. I'll just recap some of those points, and then we're going to give you a little bit of time just to kind of dive in and ask questions. So 2 ways to access your report. One is directly through your LMS by clicking on that assessments link. The second way is by logging into your assessments account and clicking on My Assignments. The most recent assignment will always appear at the top, but if you're looking for something specific, you can use our filters and our sort by. And at a glance, you'll be able to see number of students completed, how many problems, any release or due dates, and then any aligned standards in that problem set. The assignment report will show you the student progress cards up at the top, just so you have an idea of how many students completed the assignment, how many didn't start. You'll get to see the performance summary, which I would highlight on the performance summary any question that you have this big red bar that indicates students struggled on, and then the detailed report. The detailed report is going to tell you the whole class score for the entire assignment, the score by individual problem, how many attempts it took the student. The colors will tell you that. The green indicates they got it right on the first try. The orange tells you they got it right eventually on their own. And the red tells us that they didn't get it right. They had to press show answer. And then, of course, we get to see individual student scores. This class did very well, it looks like. And then the standards report is going to tell you any standards represented in that problem set, number of problems aligned to the standard, and how that student scored on that particular standard. All right, so checking in on James. James noticed that ASSISTments assignment report contains a lot of detail. Again, I hope you're not feeling too overwhelmed with the amount of detail. So he needs to know where to focus his time. So just a couple recommendations. And again, I keep promising I'm going to let you play around. I promise I will. Some ways to get started is by looking at the class average. The class average will tell the teacher which problems, will be able to quickly assess whole class understanding on the assignment at a glance. The problem average will identify which individual problems need whole class review. This is so key. It's going to tell the teacher which problems are in need of review, so they don't need to ask students, raise your hand if you didn't understand question 1 or question 2. That's the old way I used to do it, at least. The common wrong answers can facilitate whole class discussions around common misconceptions and get those cleared up. And then the individual student score by problem or standard will help you identify students in need of small group reviewing or reteaching. All right, so here it is. We're going to take a quick 2 or 3 minute break. Carrie's going to share a link in the chat. And this is just a PDF version of one of our reports. In order to actually dive into a report, you have to have your own account, your own data in your account. But this kind of just gives you a glance so you can play around with it, see if you have any questions, and just kind of absorb all the different elements that I just went over. So I'm going to set the timer just for about 2 minutes so we can make sure we finish on time today. Please share any questions, and Carrie, as they come in, please let me know and I can answer them as people are digesting this.
This is a good question about adding co-teachers to your class.
Absolutely.
Can you show how to do that?
Yes, ma'am. So if you would like to add a co-teacher, you're going to go to Google or Canvas and go to the People tab, and you're just going to add the co-teacher that you want. And same thing in Canvas, and I forget where it is in Canvas, excuse me. It might be in People, and you're going to just set that person as a teacher. Right now I have students, so you'll change that to teacher. Once you set a co-teacher as a co-teacher in your LMS, that person will just have to create their account and get verified, and they'll be all set. If you're making changes, you might need to sync your account. And just a reminder, if you need to synchronize, if you make any big changes and want them to really get pushed through, I recommend just automatically syncing. So you're going to just open up whatever problem set, go ahead and assign to class. And right here, you have the option to sync. Got to click this first and sync. And syncing is just going to reconnect your LMS and ASSISTments and make sure everything is up to date. The assignments that your co-teacher assigns will be accessible, obviously, through your LMS, but also through your My Assignments tab. So it's a really great way to kind of go at it together, and you'll have access to both assigning, and you'll also have access to viewing data reports. All right. Let's see, we'll give another 30 seconds or so. Like I said, if you're excited about data and how to make it most useful in your open up classroom, I absolutely recommend you join our next session. All right, so I am going to go ahead and move on to our almost wrap-up section. Okay, so let's just talk about getting started with assessments with your daily Open Up Resources routine. Just a few recommendations on how you can get started. So you might get started just by assigning the Jumpstart activities through assessments to get a pulse on student understanding before starting the day's lesson. Some of these Jumpstart are immediate feedback type questions. Some of these Jumpstart questions are open response. And if they are open response especially, it's a great way to see where students are thinking so you can address that before starting with new content or new material that day. You could also use assessments to assign student tasks through assessments. You could assign open up content through assessments, excuse me, to monitor students' progress through an activity in real time and address common misconceptions. Just a note that the reports will update, just you might have to refresh them, but you will be able to see if you're assigning during class time, how students are doing. And if you notice anything that stands out, you can pause class time, get to those students before those misconceptions really sink into their brains, and address those issues. You might want to use the student tasks or any other practice problems collaboratively with students. We had one teacher who's teaching a middle school age group, who I'm going to show you this video in just a minute, but I love this video because it shows students who were virtual coming back into the classroom, hybrid or in person, and using assessments to really promote discussion. So I'll show you this very short 1-minute video now.
When are bought 4 liters of orange juice, how many milliliters of orange juice does he have? I think wait, you can get a little. Okay. Well, I think when she was teaching us, she said that in milliliters, it's 100 less than the liters. No.
Wait,
no,
hold on a second. I think it's 1,000.
Me too. Right. So that means it's 1,000 and not 400. Isn't it 100 for centiliters? I think it's for milliliters.
No, for centiliters, I'm pretty sure it's 100. For milliliters, it was 1,000.
Yeah, you can put in 400 and we can put in 4,000. Yeah, I think it's 100, so we can just do it as 400. Yeah. Okay. Oh, 4,000 is right. Yeah, I got 4,000. Maybe y'all are correct.
All right, I love that video every time I watch it. And what you're not seeing on the video is that the teacher is using their time to really check in with students. The students know exactly how they're doing with that immediate feedback, and the teacher can spend time working with students who might be having a little bit more difficulty on the problem set. You could finish your lessons by assigning an exit ticket to assess whole class or individual student understanding. You could also use this data to highlight reteaching opportunities. Just a reminder that you can assign exit tickets in practice mode, which is the auto set, or you can assign in test mode if you want this to be a quick and summative experience so you can use that data to inform your instruction the next day. And lastly, definitely leverage any problems you didn't assign in class as independent practice, which will allow you to get that data before starting class the next day. Oh, and one thing I would love to hear from you in the chat, I think we do have time for this, for the few of you we have with us, is we recommend you just choose one way to get started. You might be brainstorming and getting excited about lots of different ways you could use assessments. But if you had to choose just one entry point to use assessments, what would it be? Share in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. I'm seeing collaborative work to practice. I love that. I love that, whether it's the student tasks or whether it's just extra practice problems. I can share from experience. I use assessments in my classroom all the time. I think a lot of teachers who were teaching virtually last year, which was basically all of us at some point, thought about assessments as kind of just a virtual tool, but assessments is so valuable in the classroom because it really frees up the teacher to work with students who need it, and it gives students immediate feedback. And of course, the data is so valuable to inform next steps. Thank you for sharing in the chat. All right, so tips for introducing assessments to students. James understands the basics of assessments, but he needs to get his students comfortable with using the platform. So we have some tips for you to set your students up for success. First is to share our student tutorials. We have created a Canvas and Google Classroom version of our student tutorial, which you can share out right through your LMS, and it just walks the student through where to get your assignment, how to get your account, what that experience in assessment is going to look like, even to answering open response questions. Just a reminder, this deck has all the slides and this will get sent out, has all of the links, and that'll be sent out to you tomorrow. Tip 2 is make the first assignment in assessments low stakes so students get to know the system. We have even created a student practice assignment set, which basically just prompts the student through a kind of sample assignment, telling them answer correctly, see what happens, answer incorrectly, see what happens. So it's a great way to just introduce the assessments to your students, given that it's going to be a new tool for them. Step 3 is decide on and introduce a clear protocol for open response questions. Like I said, we're going to have some new functionality coming out soon, which includes a drawing pad for open response questions. But we do have an open response tutorial, which basically just shows the students the options that they have when answering open response, from the table to our math editor. I forgot to show you that, but we do have an embedded math editor where students can enter more complex math language and math symbols and things like that, to uploading a picture. And make clear to students how you are going to use that score. From my experience, some students have a lot of anxiety in math around their scores. Because most of this is formative, we encourage you to think about the score as not a grade, but simply as an indicator of how students are performing. Carrie even created this great rubric, which is in our teacher corner, which kind of shows how she used assessments to provide full credit, partial credit, or no credit. So she could translate their effort and work into a grade, but not distinctly from the score that's on the report. All right, so wrap up and next steps. I'm on time right here. We got about 5 minutes to go ahead and do this. So recap of today. I want to start by saying thank you everyone for joining us on this Tuesday afternoon or evening, depending on where you are. Today we showed you how to create an account, how to create an assignment, where to find that open up high school mathematics content and assessments, what the student experience looks like, just the beginner of how to get that data report and how to assess it, but that's going to be in part 2 as well. Different entry points that you could take, and a few tips and suggestions for getting started with students. Carrie's going to share a link in the chat for a feedback survey. We are a free tool. We provide our webinars for free as well. So your feedback is super helpful for us to figure out what we can do to improve or how we can better support you as teachers. It is an Airtable link. So when you're seeing that in the chat, that's our webinar link. So you can open that up. It should not take you any more than 2 or 3 minutes. So you can work on that while I finish up our next steps. All right, I've talked a lot about this new user part 2, deep dive on data. So this next part is going to really dive into the data reports, think about how you can use the data to support student thinking. So that webinar is going to be on October 5th, 5 o'clock to 6:15 Eastern time. Carrie has shared the sign up a few times already. So if you haven't signed up, we'd love to see you there. If you can't attend, you have two avenues you could take. You could sign up and we will follow up with the recording, or you can just watch the recording in the Assessments webinar library. It will be posted shortly after 10:05. We do have some other upcoming webinars we'd like to highlight. One on October 21st, we have a 30-minute skill builder session. So skill builders were those mastery-based practice sets that are aligned to certain standards. So if you're interested in using those and you're not sure how to get started, that's what this 30-minute session is. And then our first Amplifying Teacher Voices targeted webinar of the year is going to talk about using assessments to address unfinished learning. So we're going to have assessments teacher presenters sharing their experiences, sharing their stories about how they use assessments to address unfinished learning in their classrooms. So we'd love to see you there as well. I want to highlight a couple resources on our website that you might go to if you're looking for support or just other ways to engage with assessments. First is our help center up here. This is where you'll find our user resources, those tutorial videos I talked about. We have a parent letter, both in English and Spanish, that you can send home. Our webinar library is here, and then also our webinar sign up when you click here. We also have some features in beta. So if you're looking at different ways to get involved more in like a study aspect, you should explore here and see if any of those opportunities are of interest of you. But my favorite part is the teacher corner. So the teacher corner has classroom artifacts, and you'll see I have one right here that I created about my favorite no, but these are great, just different experiences teachers have had in their classroom. Some of these are printables, different things you can use in your classroom, videos of different ways teachers are using assessments in their classroom. Here's the resource about using assessments with low vision students. So this is definitely a place to explore, and you might find something that's really interesting to you that you want to try in your own classroom. Stay in touch with us. We have a Facebook user community where you can learn about assessments and ask questions. We're on Twitter, we're on YouTube, we're on LinkedIn, and you can always email us at contact@assessments.org if you have any questions at all about needing those assessments, about using assessments, about any issues that you're having getting started. We are happy to help. And if you have any questions about Open Up Resources, you can reach Dana at Dana Cartier at openup.org. You can follow them on social media here and learn more about their work at the Open Up Resources website. All right, and in the interest of time, I am going to skip over that chat. And once again, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us tonight. Contact@assessments.org is the best way to get in touch with us for any of your assessments needs. And we hope to see you again at one of our upcoming webinars. So thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you soon. And thank you, Dana, for joining us from Open Up Resources. And we'll see Dana at the next webinar as well. Bye, everyone.